The mountain breaks. I am trapped under the snow. Then a hand saves me. This is Fight by Sloane St. James. It gives you hope, helps you stay calm, and build better trust. Watch my summary and read the book.
All right, let's dive into this. We've been handed a massive stack of source materials for a really exhaustive deep dive into a high-stakes contemporary romance. And this one, it swaps the usual boardroom or, the billionaire's penthouse for the incredibly intense world of wildland firefighting. So we're here to pull out the truly critical insights.
Exactly. Our mission today is, it goes so far beyond a simple plot summary.
Yeah.
We are here to really analyze the mechanics of emotional resonance in Fight by Sloane St. James. We're going to be dissecting the pacing, the deeply flawed character motivations, and all the structural choices that make this story, set in Skyridge, Washington, such a compelling read.
And I have to say, I really appreciate that the author felt the need to declare right up front that no generative AI was used. That immediate statement, it feels like a signal to you, the reader. It's saying, look, this is a story that's driven by complex, messy, and uniquely human emotions, not some predictable algorithm. And that promise, it just sets the emotional bar incredibly high right from page one.
It absolutely does. And the setting is so critical here. It almost functions as its own character. This isn't just, some small town flavor thrown in for color. It's deep occupational immersion. We are squarely in the world of the elite Skyridge Hotshots. And we have to note that their logo, a bear wielding a chainsaw, is just the perfect visceral shorthand for the kind of raw energy this subgenre promises.
Yes.
And then you have the heroine, Scotty, who grounds us in the local response as an EMT.
That point about the bear logo is fascinating because it immediately telegraphs the specific kind of hero you're expecting. Rugged, dangerous, protective, and probably emotionally unavailable.
Yeah.
And the source material gave us this truly detailed glossary of wildland fire terms.
Yeah.
Which, it isn't just trivia, it's the very foundation of these characters' lives.
Right, and that's where we should start, the genre, the foundation of this whole world.
Let's do it.
So when we really examine the world building, you see this deliberate choice to use the job as a constant source of external pressure. The Hotshots are the apex. They're the elite wildland crews. They work alongside the hand crew, which is typically around 20 people whose entire job is to physically dig a fire line, clear trees, clear brush. It's brutal work.
I think we need to isolate the function of that labor, though.
Yeah.
We're talking about tools like the Pulaski. It's an axe blade on one side and adze on the other. It's this fundamental tool for trenching and scraping. It's
Yes.
relentless physical labor.
Yeah.
Digging the line, clearing field. It isn't just a job. It's a form of sustained, exhausting meditation that reinforces that all-or-nothing professional mindset that Callahan operates under.
Precisely. And the operational risks, they are never just background noise. They are constant psychological stressors. Just think about the concept of backburns. You're intentionally setting fire to starve the main front of fuel. That act of deliberate destruction and control is a perfect internal metaphor for Cal.
Oh, that's really good.
He tries to manage his CPTSD by intentionally sacrificing these small, superficial connections. He's setting emotional backburns, really, all to protect the core of himself, even if it leaves these lasting emotional scars all over his life.
That's a powerful insight. And then you have the terrifying, unpredictable elements like ember wash, a shower of hot embers carried by the wind, or spot fires that can just jump control lines, sometimes miles away.
Yeah.
These risks mean the crew cannot afford a single error, a single moment of distraction, so they are constantly in a state of hypervigilance. And that environment is just fundamentally toxic to any kind of sustained, healthy relationship.
It creates a very specific culture, which the text explicitly notes, and I'm quoting here, "No work-life balance here, it's all or nothing." And this is where the emotional architecture of the hotshot crew starts to override the traditional concept of family or partnership.
Which brings us right back to the idea of the trauma bond. The source material observes, when you trust your crew with your life, you become close. Some call it a trauma bond. Now, I see your point that this explains the fierce loyalty Cal has to his crew, to Xander and King. But I have to ask, is calling it a trauma bond truly insightful? Or is it just sort of the easy psychological label for extreme loyalty under extreme stress?
That's a fair challenge, a really fair challenge. The text doesn't explicitly push back on the label itself, but it shows us the necessary isolation that it enforces. If your entire emotional support system is built around people who regularly witness death and manage extreme risk, well, that shared experience fundamentally makes any outside relationship almost doomed from the start. It's just too difficult for an outsider to bridge that kind of gap in understanding.
And that isolation is the narrative engine for Cal's prior failure with Molly, his ex-fiancée. The fire assignments are brutal. 2 weeks on a roll, that you get only a few days of R&R. That constant absence, combined with the emotional compartmentalization that's required just for survival out there, it created the strain that Molly couldn't endure. And that's what led to her affair with Dave Banner. The job literally provided the space for betrayal to happen.
And that's what the first responder romance subgenre thrives on. It leverages this inherent isolation. The stakes are never just personal. They are professional and they are mortal. If Cal and Scotty fail to communicate, the consequences could be, professional failure or literally freezing to death on a mountain. This immediately elevates the emotional investment for you, the reader.
Okay, let's transition slightly here. Let's discuss the author's voice, Sloane St. James. It's established very early on as engaging and really self-aware, particularly through Scotty's internal life.
Oh, Scotty's self-awareness is absolutely key to making this whole story work. She's actively reading forbidden romance novels, which is just this wonderful piece of meta-commentary on the genre itself. Her reading habit is a vital part of her emotional foundation. It reflects this profound desire for an emotional reality, a life of agency and passion that was just completely absent in her previous life in the fold.
And this feeds directly into the sub-theme of Scotty's escape and discovery. I mean, she is 32 years old, and she's experiencing the joy of a first crush. She's desperately craving normalcy. This is late-life self-discovery, and it is entirely propelled by her dramatic escape from this controlling religious community she was in, known as the Fold.
We could spend a long time here, a whole tangent on the psychology of escapism in romance, because Scotty explicitly states that romance novels were her only escape back in Arkansas. She was trapped in this transactional clinical marriage, and what she craved wasn't just passion. It was the validation of self-worth that those books represented for her. She even notes that in her past life, the woman's pleasure mattered only for reproduction.
That one single sentence, pleasure mattering only for reproduction, is the entire thematic argument of the book compressed into one observation. It sets the baseline for her emotional deficit. The passion she's reading about, it isn't about graphic content. It's about the representation of agency she was denied her entire adult life.
Yeah.
And that's why her flirtation with Cal, who's, objectively a total risk, is so exhilarating for her. It makes her forget who I am or where I come from. It's an intoxicating temporary amnesia.
Exactly. So her move to Skyridge is this intentional pilgrimage for freedom. She uses money saved in a coffee can, which is such a powerful symbol of meticulous secret planning over years. The town itself becomes a magnet. It balances the nomadic chaos of the Hotshots with the profound promise of stability that Scotty needs to build a new life.
And that need for stability is made so tangible through the unique emotional anchor of Skyridge, which is Callahan's fixer-upper at 218 Spencer. Scotty has this immediate, profound connection to the house. She calls it her dream house. And this house, which we find out Cal has also been eyeing for his future with Molly, it becomes this powerful, physical piece of romantic foreshadowing.
It's so much more than just a house. It's an architectural metaphor. The house is a fixer-upper.
Right.
Cal is broken by trauma. Scotty's broken by her past. The shared desire for that specific damaged property solidifies their shared, if unspoken, vision of a future stability that requires work. The house embodies the life Cal thinks he wants, marriage, promotion, the whole package. And it embodies the life Scotty desperately needs: independence, home, safety. So when they finally realize they are both obsessed with the exact same place, it's a structural confirmation that they are meant to be on the same path.
Okay, let's pivot now to the characters themselves. Our hero, Callahan Cal Woods, is defined entirely by his internal and external conflict. We absolutely have to start with the severity of his baggage, the CPTSD, and the crushing weight of his grief.
Cal's trauma is the central pillar of his personality. It's not just a detail. He witnessed the horrific death of his superintendent and father figure, Garrett Maycomb, and the manifestations of this trauma are constant. There's the distraction, which is lethal in his job, and then there's the specific physical reaction of feeling stifled and inability to breathe, especially at the funeral reception.
That feeling of the room being stifling hot, the air is thick, it's so crucial. It's a classic physical manifestation of his anxiety and his guilt, and it's turning into a panic attack right there. And it's deeply ironic, isn't it, that his primary emotional trigger-stifling heat and lack of air is also the literal environment of his profession. He's constantly running toward the very thing that physically and psychologically threatens to crush him. The job itself becomes this constant mechanism of trauma avoidance.
And that avoidance is reinforced by his chosen coping mechanism, which is alcohol. The book mentions him taking a few pulls before the funeral service. It shows he immediately chose to numb the pain rather than confront it. And this avoidance eventually led to the breakdown with Molly and his later CPTSD diagnosis.
Right, and he tried therapy once, but he came home exhausted and drained, feeling no better. And that led to an argument. So he decides to shove his issues deep enough that it won't surface. This illustrates his core belief. His trauma must be hidden to protect his professional life and maintain his hotshot image. He sees vulnerability as a weakness that can get people killed.
Exactly. And his career goals, becoming captain of the Skyridge Hotshots, and his domestic ambitions, like marrying Molly and buying the house, are all linked to this deep-seated need to prove he is fundamentally unbroken and in control. The promotion is a BFD, a big deal, because it represents stability. It allows him to finally settle down, which is a counter-narrative to the chaos of his internal life.
But this ambition is immediately poisoned by his past, which created his well-earned reputation as a commitment phobe and an asshole. The whole disaster with Molly, her affair with Dave Banner, that cemented his relationship stance. He built a fortress around his heart, asserting, this is a quote, "The space my heart once occupied is barren, so there's no use in trying to plant themselves there because nothing will ever grow."
It's so bleak. He actively seeks sexual encounters with no strings attached, and he completely owns his reputation. I mean, he introduces himself to Scotty by saving his number in her burner phone as Cal the Liar. He sets the expectation of impermanence from the very first text. He's trying to prevent history from repeating itself by never giving enough of himself to lose.
And yet, we have the great paradox of Cal. Despite the dick and liar thief persona he projects, he is deeply, fundamentally responsible. His instinct to protect Scotty on Quell's peak is instantaneous, and it risks his own life. And he eventually seeks therapy because Scotty demands it of him. His intense animosity toward Dave Banner, who he dislikes professionally anyway, Dave's a county firefighter, is rooted in a highly personal sense of betrayal and protectiveness.
So if Cal is defined by the fire he runs toward, then Scotty is defined by the rigid, emotionally sterile structure she ran from. And that brings us to the profound complexity of our heroine, Prescott Scotty Timmons, and her escape from the fold.
We really need to detail the level of oppression she faced here. This wasn't just, a strict community. It was a place where marriage was a controlled covenant and life was dictated by religious leaders who profit from that control.
And her husband, Jonathan, is gay. Their marriage was a complete sham orchestrated by the fold to try and fix him. Scotty describes their sexual relationship as becoming almost clinical and simply a habit. It was used strictly for the transactional purpose of reproduction. The emotional and sexual starvation she endured for 14 years is the inverse of Cal's explosive trauma. It's a trauma of persistent emotional absence.
And her refusal to continue sleeping with Jonathan wasn't a whim. It was the final desperate act of self-preservation that served as the catalyst for her escape. This was a radical rejection of her entire prescribed identity.
And the practicalities of her escape and financial precarity, they just underscore her courage. She fled Arkansas using money saved in a coffee can cache, untraceable. She secured a studio apartment sight unseen, a dump, a shithole, sweet shithole, she calls it. She's lying about vaccine records and using a flip phone, a burner, specifically because she was terrified the council would track her social security number. Her EMT job isn't a career choice, it's her reward. It's her ticket to absolute freedom and anonymity.
She is so desperately trying to cultivate a new self and vulnerability. She views her confidence as entirely faked. She feels like an alien trying to blend in with humans. And logically, she knows dating Cal is insane, given her need for stability and secrecy. Yet the flirtation is fun and exciting and new, and it makes her feel alive and desired for the very first time. She even diagnoses her own feelings, acknowledging they are born from limerence and loneliness.
That self-diagnosis is key. Limerence is often fleeting, a product of intense longing, but the text assures us her feelings for Cal are deeper than that. And let's not overlook the subtle revelation of her name. Cal initially messes it up. He calls her Preston or Prescott or some shit, before he realizes that Prescott is her legal name. Scotty is the identity she chose for her new free life. She literally renamed herself to achieve liberation.
That point is so critical. She shed the name associated with her oppression. Now let's get to the sparks.
Right.
The breakdown of chemistry, tension, and banter at Shifty's bar is just electric. Cal sees her, and immediately his internal monologue translates her into lumberjack porn and a knockout. It's instantaneous, raw physical attraction.
And their banter, it sets up the structural conflict of the book perfectly with the liar dynamic. Cal explicitly names himself Cal the Liar, and she responds that she's really attracted to liars. It's this mutual recognition that they are both masking intense emotional vulnerability behind this witty dishonesty. It is, in a weird way, being honest about being dishonest.
And the moment that should have been the first warning sign for Cal, the red flag parade as he calls it, is her burner phone. It has only 2 contacts, boss and landlord. A normal person would run. But Cal chooses to ignore it because she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. He accepts the risk, proving his self-proclaimed asshole persona is a paper-thin defense against a genuine connection.
And the secondary characters all serve these very specific narrative functions. They're either there to accelerate or to sabotage the connection. Dave Banner is the perfect structural antagonist. He's the constant physical reminder of Cal's deepest trauma, the man who slept with his former fiancée. So Dave's later insinuation that he slept with Scotty acts as a direct, lethal, emotional trigger. It drives the key miscommunication and Cal's disastrous emotional retreat.
And then you've got the professional family, Xander and King. They ground Cal in his work identity. Xander's protective nature and King's silence during Cal's later emotional turmoil, they just underscore the loyalty and the complexity of that trauma bond we talked about.
And we absolutely must give credit to Jonathan. He is not the classic mustache-twirling villain. He's a fellow victim of the fold, manipulated just as Scotty was. His appearance late in the story completely flips the conflict from a simple affair narrative to a complex, shared escape narrative. His eventual acceptance of Cal's help turns their tense confrontation into a moment of complex, mutual support.
Okay, let's talk about the plot structure because it's rapid fire.
Yes.
The relationship starts with the initial flirting, the bar, the jogging encounter, the witty texts. All this low-stakes communication serves to establish their rapport outside of their high-stakes jobs.
The texting is so key because it establishes their emotional intimacy before anything physical happens. The commitment to the dolphin trainer lie, the mutual hope that each other's day sucks, it's playful and it's bonding. But it's punctuated by Scotty's quiet anxiety about money. She thinks, I can't risk having to split the bill on a date. Her struggle for financial survival is this constant underlying hum beneath all the flotation.
And this all accelerates into the massive misunderstanding. The dark moment. Cal, planning a surprise visit to Scotty's apartment, sees Dave Banner walking out of her building. It's a literal reenactment of his past trauma.
And Cal's response isn't rational, it's visceral. It's driven entirely by past betrayal. He doesn't want to jump to conclusions, but the source material makes it clear that it's hard not to feel the weight of betrayal every time I see his face. And Dave, knowing exactly who Cal is and what he represents, intentionally baits him. He says, we just ate. And then when Cal asks about them sleeping together, Dave delivers the devastating line. We spent the night together, but we were definitely not sleeping.
The baiting works perfectly because it confirms Cal's deepest fears about his life repeating itself. The trauma trigger makes logical thought completely impossible. He doesn't investigate. He simply retreats into his protective shell and sends that abrupt, devastating text. Things have run their course with us.
And Scotty's reaction is deeply painful, but it's also self-validating in a strange way. She calls it her first true experience with rejection, which is awful, but she realizes that the meaning she had imputed to their texts was a product of my imagination. She calls herself an idiot for trusting him, yet she recognizes that even feeling this sharp pain is still better than feeling numb, which connects right back to the emotional void of her life in the fold.
The relationship collision that forces resolution is, of course, the grand gesture. The rescue on Quell's Peak. Cal, restless with guilt and anxiety, is out for a run, and he spots Scotty on the mountain trail just as a severe storm rolls in.
And this is where the structural focus on his hotshot training truly pays off. His bullshit radar goes off immediately, and it overrides his personal resentment toward her. The key detail isn't just the gear he grabs, the crampons, the space blanket, the avalanche shovel, but the speed of his transition. His professional identity overrides his emotional pain instantly, which proves that his protective instinct is fundamental to his character, not just his job.
And his emotional shift from anger, what the fuck, to primal protector when he finds her trapped by a rock slide, it's the turning point. She's hypothermic, concussed, her shoulder is dislocated, she's hiding in an empty shaft between the boulders and the mountainside. He just recognizes the urgency and takes complete control, forcing her to focus on survival.
And this immediate crisis leads directly into the core trope execution of the book: forced proximity in the fire lookout. Stranded for 4 days in this fire tower, they are immediately stripped down to their most vulnerable selves, focused only on fire, water, and shelter. The fire lookout acts as a crucible where all their conflicts must be resolved before they can physically descend the mountain.
The pivotal moment is this simultaneous emotional disarmament. Cal's revelation comes first. He confesses why he ended things. He acknowledges he was beating myself up for weeks thinking I broke a marriage apart. This whole time I thought I did the same thing to another man. His trauma made him self-destructive and just so quick to judgment.
And then Scotty's revelation immediately shifts the power dynamic. She counters his pain with her complete confession about the fold, about Jonathan's true sexual identity and their clinical marriage. And this is the moment the narrative flips. Cal is no longer the victim of betrayal. He is a co-conspirator in a shared escape narrative. It fosters this immediate, profound empathy. They realize they are both running from the ghosts of failed relationships that were built on deception.
And their isolation forces them to tackle their internal versus external conflicts head-on. Scotty's main internal battle is the guilt she feels over abandoning Jonathan and the pervasive fear of the fold finding her. This struggle to let go of religious dogma, she says, it was my duty and one I was proud to perform until I started questioning things. That is a far deeper conflict than Cal's immediate external threats.
Absolutely. And Cal's internal battle, conquering his CPTSD and his commitment issues, is also accelerated by proximity. The necessity of Scotty helping him through a panic attack in the lookout, where he describes gasping like I'm breaking the water surface, it forces him to drop his protective mask. He learns that vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a necessary component of survival when you have the right partner.
So the fire lookout becomes this ultimate environment for building trust and emotional intimacy in isolation. They share traumas they have never exposed to anyone else, and Cal even notes, Molly and I never had anything like this. We kept things from each other. The silence of the mountain just forces them to speak the truth.
It does. The isolation acts as an emotional truth serum, and it forces a dramatic shift in their communication patterns. It moves from playful flirting to profound, high-stakes emotional discussion. And Scotty, empowered by her new freedom, demands accountability for Cal's CPTSD. She states, I need to know you'll fight for yourself. If you want to do this, I promise you won't do it alone. She turns their connection into a partnership built on mutual healing, not just on physical attraction.
And now, we absolutely must address the elephant in the lookout, or rather, the Squirrel Incident. It is bizarre, hilarious, and structurally genius. Cal has provided shelter, warmth, rescue. But Scotty, who is fueled by trauma and hypothermia, snaps at him for taking too long to get water.
I need to pause here. A dead squirrel. I need to know how this plays out because this is the most absurd piece of intentional comic relief I have ever seen integrated into a serious trauma scene.
It is absolute chaos. Cal, having done everything right, snaps back at her by picking up a dead, eyeless, shriveled squirrel and lobbing it at her in a fit of pure, unedited frustration. He shouts, I gave you everything, Prescott, everything, and it's still not enough for you. It's a moment of explosive, honest communication that is impossible in polite society, but totally necessary for two people trapped together at the end of their rope.
And Scotty's reaction, attempting to smother a grin, confirms that this ridiculous primal outburst somehow broke all the tension. It was strangely therapeutic because it was pure, unedited honesty. Cal dropped the hero mask, and Scotty allowed herself a moment of ridiculous humanity, and it just leveled the playing field completely. That kind of shared absurdity is often a much faster path to intimacy than hours of talking.
This shared absurdity and emotional breakthrough immediately precedes the highly descriptive, detailed discussion of physical intimacy and heat level. Critically, intimacy in this novel always follows an emotional breakthrough. It reinforces Scotty's assertion that the woman's pleasure matters and that physical connection must be linked to vulnerability.
And the first intimate attempt, the ambulance scene, the first encounter, is so high risk due to the secluded but visible location at Camp Blue Sky. Cal's rough, hotshot hands are unexpectedly tender, kneading the red marks where the straps dug into my skin. But the passion is interrupted by a lightning strike, which triggers Cal's panic attack. It forces this immediate, terrifying emotional shift before the physical connection could be consummated. The plot prioritizes their emotional safety over physical gratification.
Right, and their connection is later explored fully through the battleship's striptease scene in the fire lookout. The authors use a seemingly mundane game to heighten the sexual tension. The rule: Scotty doesn't remove clothing until Cal sinks the ship.
This is a fantastic literary device, and this is a great place for a tangent about tropes in intimate scenes. They are using Battleship, which is a game of strategic hiding and seeking, as a metaphor for dismantling their emotional defenses. Cal deliberately clusters his ships in the corner to accelerate the game. He acknowledges its poor strategy, but he's prioritizing the emotional payoff. He asks, which one of us is naked right now? The playfulness and the control, it just heightens the connection because they are making the vulnerability a shared game. You see this a lot in romance, using something mundane like a board game or cooking a meal together to strip away the pretense and get to the real intimacy. It lowers the stakes of the activity so they can raise the stakes of the emotional connection.
And the physical intimacy culminates in Scotty's raw and vulnerable confession. Cal was the first man to make her come in her entire 14 years of marriage. This revelation is massive. It's not just great sex. It is Scotty's sexual liberation and the ultimate validation of her self-worth and independence.
That makes Cal's unique impact on her new chosen life exponential. She contrasts this experience by realizing she experienced more passion in the back of that ambulance in Oregon than in all 14 years of marriage. This is the ultimate so what of their connection. Their relationship is literally a lifeline to her emotional and physical independence, proving that the love she read about in her romance novels is finally her reality.
Okay, let's talk about the pacing of this novel. It is not a slow burn. It's a structural necessity, a violent acceleration fueled by crisis. We'll call it the survival pacing. Within 4 days of forced proximity on Quell's Peak, they move from sworn enemies fueled by betrayal to sharing their deepest secrets and sleeping wrapped up in each other's arms.
But the true test of this pace is the pacing of real-world decisions. Immediately upon returning, they execute massive life changes with whiplash speed. Cal confronts Jonathan, Scotty gives notice at her dump apartment, and she moves in with Cal all within days of leaving the mountain. This isn't irrational. Is Cal applying his hotshot energy, that all-or-nothing approach, to his relationship? He's prioritizing immediate action over cautious reflection.
And this intensity is required for their significant personal transformation. For Callahan, the growth hinges entirely on the fight for self.
Scotty's challenge to him is the absolute hinge of the novel. I need to know you'll fight for yourself. If you want to do this, I promise you won't do it alone. She is not accepting his trauma as an excuse. She's demanding that he treats his CPTSD with the same commitment he gives to fighting a wildfire. And this is what leads Cal to commit to starting therapy. Scotty's reaction, "I'm so proud of you," validates his growth in a way professional success never could.
And he demonstrates this commitment over trauma by actively fighting for her safety and freedom. He cleans out her rat-infested studio, he confronts Jonathan, and he makes a bold public declaration of his intentions when he says, "Because I can't marry her until you divorce her." That commitment, made under high emotional duress, is far more significant than any planned traditional proposal.
And for Scotty, her empowerment and healing is centered on finding her voice and making assertive choices. She transitions from being a victim of the Folt's control to demanding a divorce from Jonathan and demanding that Cal commit to fighting for his own mental health.
Her journey culminates in the physical act of finding home. Her realization that Callahan's fixer-upper is her dream house solidifies her independence. The house itself symbolizes the safety and the potential for repair. Her life is now defined by her own choices, stepping fully out of the Folt's shadow and linking her physical freedom to emotional security.
The ultimate external conflict climax, Cal versus Jonathan, is structurally brilliant because it completely subverts the expected love triangle confrontation. Cal goes in expecting hostility, demanding a divorce, but the scene just flips dramatically.
Cal ends up becoming the protector of both Scotty and Jonathan. Cal's primary argument is based on Scotty's safety. She's not leaving Skyridge. But he crucially appeals to Jonathan's self-worth. He says, "Aren't you tired of feeling trapped? You deserve a life as much as she does."
This is the moment Cal fully embraces Scotty's narrative. He isn't just taking his woman, he's dismantling the institutional oppression that hurt them both. And then he makes that intense declaration, "I can't marry her until you divorce her." It's a statement of ownership and commitment, revealing his true long-term intent delivered to the man who legally stands in his way.
Jonathan's response confirms the narrative shift. He agrees to take the organizational help, the housing, the legal aid that Cal secured for him. And he affirms Scotty's choice, saying, "You're the truest family I've ever had." This just dissolves the love triangle, transforming the external conflict into a complex, supportive partnership rooted in shared trauma and escape.
So when we evaluate the romantic arc satisfaction, this story absolutely delivers a robust, happily ever after, an HEA. And it's precisely because it is so grounded in reality and mutual effort. The book concludes with the divorce papers pending and them moving in together.
The HEA is practical and immediate. Cal moves Scotty out of her dumb apartment, and the book notes the necessary unromantic detail that he had to deal with the rats. This immediate physical act of care is the practical manifestation of his promise. I'm not walking away without a fight. It's commitment shown through practical application.
And crucially, their future is secured by their mutual commitment to healing. Both are committed to therapy, Cal for CPTSD, Scotty for religious trauma. Their foundation is built not on escaping their past, but on confronting it together. That ensures their relationship is emotionally strong enough to withstand the next crisis.
And Scotty's lasting emotional impact is her reflection that her life is wonderful. It's characterized by the kind of love she read about in romance novels, where she feels alive and desired. She found the passion she craved because she chose freedom and self-worth first.
Let's talk about the core thematic resonance here: love versus control. The story provides an extremely stark contrast between the Folds relationships, which are controlled, transactional, and reproduction-focused, and the wild, passionate, vulnerable, and ultimately chosen relationship with Callahan. The contrast is the very definition of liberation.
The story powerfully attests to choosing freedom and self-worth. Scotty realizes that if there is a God, he's not at the fold, he's here. And where is here? In the wild, untamed beauty of Quell's Peak, and in the passionate, honest love she found with Cal. She found faith in the untamed, in the messy reality of life, not in the enforced structure of the fold.
That outside context is so important. It's why the occupational details feel so authentic and why Cal's emotional complexity, especially his struggle with CPTSD, feels earned rather than manipulative.
And finally, that unconventional proposal, Cal's impulsive declaration to Jonathan, "Because I can't marry her until you divorce her," is the absolute climax of his commitment. It's a statement of intent made under the highest emotional stress, delivered to the literal obstacle standing in the way of their shared future. It reveals his long-term plan when he thought he was only reacting in anger.
It's a statement of absolute ownership and protection. It shows Jonathan that Cal views Scotty's safety and happiness as non-negotiable. It proves he has finally internalized the core lesson. Scotty is his true anchor, not just the job.
So what does this entire exhaustive deep dive mean for you, the listener? We've seen Scotty view her life in Skyridge as a physical escape. She found her dream house. But Cal is the one who sleeps better when her body is wrapped around his, after years of sleepless nights defined by panic and running from trauma.
And that means that for Scotty, home started as a physical location she desperately desired. But it only became real when she had emotional security and felt safe enough to heal her past. For Callahan, he finally found his true anchor in Scotty, suggesting that the ultimate destination wasn't geographical for her. It was the profound, hard-won emotional security that allowed him to finally stop running from the fire within.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This is the final thought for you to take away. What happens when your greatest escape turns out to be your truest destination?
Scotty ran for her life and found a home she never knew she deserved. Callahan tried to run from his trauma and found the one person who refused to let him hide. Their relationship is a testament to the fact that the hardest battles are always the internal ones, and they are best fought with a partner who demands that you fight for yourself.
That was an incredible, truly exhaustive deep dive into fire, faith, and the forced proximity that bound them. Thank you for sharing your sources with us. We hope you feel thoroughly informed and ready to start that next chapter.